Let's say our culprit is Duffy A. So at Coombs, on this one, maybe we get 1 plus, 2 plus, and negative. This is showing a weaker expression because it is shared. It is heterozygous. It's shared on the allele. It'll show dosage, which means shows less reactivity when both of them are present. This one occurs by itself, so it shows up much stronger. And again, this is our antibody. Once we ruled everything out, it was the Duffy A. So when the Duffy A and the Duffy B both occur on the cell, it'll be a weaker reaction. Think of it as these two are competing for space on the cell. So when you have a bunch of Duffy B, there's not as much room for as much Duffy A. So you get a weaker reaction. As a result of this, Duffy A gets all the room. Duffy A antigens everywhere. So you get a good, nice, strong reaction. Where is this important? Because as we go down and we start looking at this, because one of the things I told you, when you start getting multiple different strengths of reactions, the first thing you start thinking is multiple antibodies present. You got all these 1s and 2s, so you start thinking, is there 2 antibodies there? No, there's not. There's still just 1. It's just showing dosage.
Because there's only 1.
Because of the codominance.
Right.
And that's why it tends to cause problem. Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea of dosage. Does that mean like amount of activity or?
Yeah. When they're inherited together, there's less activity. Like I said, think of it as Duffy A and Duffy B are, when they're sharing the red cell, Duffy B is taking up a lot of space that Duffy A can't use now. So it reacts weaker because there's not as many antigens. Whereas if Duffy B's not there, Duffy A gets to spread out and go wherever it wants to go. Or vice versa. This is usually not a problem until you start getting those really weak reactions, because what you might get is it may not react at all if it's heterozygous. Because like even the homozygous one is pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
So this might be too weak for us to even detect. That's when it's a problem.
Then what?
Then you start incubating longer, add enhancement, maybe go to the enzyme treated panels trying to enhance reactivity, whatever you can. Because once you start thinking, you know, because you get down to the points like, this has got to be a Duffy A, I just can't prove it. That's when you start doing that to try to figure out to prove it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 5 rows of data here. Does
Yeah.
each row signify a different patient?
A different cell on your panel. Remember, antibody screen was 3 cells? This is part of a panel. This would be cell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Different bottles in that kit.
Are being tested on the same patient?
Yep. Like I said, Duffy A is our culprit, but this one being heterozygous, being weaker, we're not even picking it up. Because even the homozygous is pretty weak. And that's what's scary, and I've never had that happen. I've had it show dosage, but never to the point that I couldn't detect the weak one. So it's usually not an issue. Tomorrow, for lab, we're going to do lab in here. We're going to do antibody panels and work on ruling out and identifying what's left. And now you do have one on there that shows dosage. And we're going to sit down, we're going to do it together, and we'll figure out how to work this overhead projector over here, so that I can sit over there and project on the screen. Worked last year, no promises. But I built 5 or 6 of them to just practice this. Practice ruling them out to figure out what's left, what's our culprit. And on at least 1, maybe 2 of those, I did it with dosage, where you get the different strengths of reactions, because anytime these are inherited together, it's going to be weaker. And a lot of times it's not even a huge difference in strength. Sometimes it's like a really good strong 2+, and it may be like barely a 2+. but it can get like 3+ to 1+ too. And that's just a toss up, depends on the patient. Depends on how much of each antigen they inherited on their red cells, you know, that's what determines strength. But like I said, when you're talking about these dosage ones, you know, if blue is Duffy A, it's got all the room in the world to do what it wants to do if there's no Duffy B. You start adding a bunch of Duffy B, oh, it dried out. You start adding a bunch of Duffy B, and now it doesn't have a stronger reaction because there's less of it. So like I said, think of it that way if you have to. In this cell, there's less Duffy A available. It can't react as strong.
Therefore making the dosage smaller.
Makes it weaker. Yeah. Remember the weak D? When they just don't have very much antigen, you get a real weak reaction? That B being there is making this basically a weak Duffy A.
It's not very strong.
Does that help at all?
Yes.
But the main ones is just to be aware of which one of those show dosage. That way you start seeing these multiple reactions you have in your head. It's like, okay, is this 2 antibodies or is this dosage? Because usually if I start seeing 1+, 2+, 1+, 1+, 2+, I'm thinking, oh God, they got 2 antibodies. That's usually the first thought in my head because that's the typical.
Right.
Because you don't want to see multiple strengths of reactions. You don't want to see reactions at different phases either. You got 4 tubes that pop up positive at immediate spin, and then you got 3 more that pop up positive at Coombs.
Oh,
That's 2 total. That's an IgM and an IgG. So you got 2 things going on.
right.
You got 4 tubes pop up positive at immediate spin, and at the end, that's still the only 4 positive. You're good. Nothing changed.
Okay.
But when you start getting different reactions at different phases or reactions of different strengths, you gotta start thinking they got more than one.
It's not super common, but it happens.
It happens.
Right.
You'll deal with multiple antibodies, depending on the size of the hospital, I mean, several times a year. I mean, it's a once every 6 week time deal, you know.
Okay.
Usually it's one of
Long enough to keep it in the back of your head, but not,
Yeah.
okay.
Usually it's one at a time, and most of those, you've already got a history on them. You know before you ever start, so, oh, they got killed.
Okay. I see.
I've only, in 10 years, once or twice maybe, been the first person to take an antibody on somebody.
Okay.
Usually it's history. They've had it for years. You already know.
All right.
So it's not that big a deal. And when they don't have a history and I think they got an antibody, I would always call St. Joe. Because sometimes they would have
Because
history.
they've probably been there. Just.
And hey, the blood bankers over there would call me.
Right.
So, hey, you have a history on John Doe? Well, let me look. Yeah,
Use
sure
your
do.
resources.
They got a big seat.
Right on.
You know, so use your resources. Because especially if they're a local person, they got that antibody somewhere.
Right.
If we don't have a history on them, maybe they got it across town, so call them.
Okay.
We actually had their St. Joe's number written on the wall in blood bank. We call them frequently.
Makes sense.
And when you have somebody with an antibody, a lot of times ABI knows. So you can call it then, call Arkansas Blood Agency.
Okay.
Hey, y'all have an antibody history on such and such patient, this date of birth? Because a lot of them, they know.
Because they have to get things for them. What have you.
Because if we ever order and request, like Duffy A negative units to give to a patient, they say, what's the patient's name, date of birth?
They ask you for the specific
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
That way they'll go ahead and put record of it that we already know.
Okay.
They don't have one on everybody, but a lot of patients, they have history.
Once you get a weird one, they want to keep track of it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And that's all I got today. Like I said, tomorrow, all we're gonna do is practice panels.